Welcome to Sunshine Stories. Today our book is The Outside Dog by Charlotte Pomerantz. Pictures by Jennifer Plikas. Marisol wants a dog. Marisol lived with her grandfather in Puerto Rico. Their home was in a little village on the side of a hill. There was a big mango tree in the yard and mountains all around. Below was the warm blue sea. Their neighbor up the hill was Doña Elvira. She owned a little colmado where they bought their groceries. Their neighbor down the hill was a fisherman named Nando. Sometimes in the early morning, Marisol went fishing with him. There were many dogs on the hill. They were strays. No one owned or took care of them. Marisol had always wanted a dog, but grandfather said they had fleas and ticks and who knows what. Whenever a dog came into the yard, grandfather chased it away. Vete, he screamed. Scram! One day, grandfather and Marisol came home and found a dog sitting near their house. He was a skinny brown mutt with perky ears and big brown eyes. Grandfather chased him away, but that evening the dog came back. When Marisol thought her grandfather was not looking, she sneaked out and petted him. Marisol, said grandfather, I told you not to pet the dogs. They have fleas and ticks and who knows what. But, abuelito, this one does not, said Marisol. Look. Que raro, grandfather said. There is not a flea on him. So may I pet him? Asked Marisol. You may pet this one, but only this one. And don't feed him a thing. ¿Entiendes? Said grandfather. Once you feed a stray dog, he never goes away. Later, when they were eating pork chops and potatoes, the dog came and sat very quietly outside the screen door. Grandpa, do you think he is hungry? Asked Marisol. Of course he is hungry. Every stray dog on this hill is hungry, said grandfather. If I worried about that, I would be feeding 20 dogs. Grandfather piled the leftover bones onto a plate. What are you going to do with the bones? Asked Marisol. Throw them in the garbage, of course, said grandfather. Why don't you give them to the dog? Asked Marisol. Grandfather sighed. All right, just this once, but not here, out on the road away from the house. I don't want him to think that this is his home. They walked to the road. The dog followed. When grandfather dumped the plate of bones, 3 other dogs came running. Scram! Grandfather shouted. Let this one eat. Vete! A collar for Pancho. Grandfather sipped dark coffee in the doorway. Marisol patted the dog. He is sort of nice looking for a mutt, isn't he, Grandpa? He's okay, said grandfather. I don't think he is all mutt, said Marisol. Maybe 90%. The rest of him looks like a fancy dog. If he is part mutt, he is all mutt, said grandfather. Marisol parted his fur. Uh-oh, she said. Now I see a couple of fleas. We better get him a flea collar. Que cosa? Said grandfather. Whoever heard of putting a flea collar on a stray dog? Oh, Grandpa, please let me buy one with the money Uncle Cuco gave me for my birthday. Grandfather shrugged. I suppose you can buy what you wish with your own money, he said. But don't think this dog is going to like having a collar around his neck. At Doña Elvira's store, there were flea collars in 2 sizes, medium and large. Is he a medium dog or a large dog? Asked Doña Elvira. He is sort of medium-large, said Marisol. I think he is more medium than large, said grandfather. Marisol nodded. I think so too, she said. When they got back to the house, the dog sat very still while Marisol put the flea collar on him. That's odd, said grandfather. I didn't think he would like it. He loves it, said Marisol proudly. At bedtime, Marisol said, "The dog is in the yard, abuelito. Is it okay if he sleeps here?" I don't see any way to stop him, said Grandfather. There is a full moon, so he will not be in the dark, said Marisol. And when it rains, he can keep dry under the mango tree. Uh-huh, said Grandfather. Grandpa, he's asleep, said Marisol. I guess he feels at home, said Grandfather. Marisol's eyes brightened. At home? I didn't say this was his home. I just said he feels at home. Now go to bed, said Grandfather. Grandpa, Marisol called, you forgot to kiss me good night. Marisol heard the floor creak as Grandfather got up and crossed the room in his bare feet. Sleep well, Mary, he said. Marisol smiled. That is what I said when I said good night to Pancho. Pancho? Said Grandfather. Who is Pancho? My dog, said Marisol. I named him Pancho. The search. At supper the next day, they had stew. There were no leftovers. Marisol did not say anything, but Grandfather could see she was unhappy. Give him a little chopped meat from the refrigerator, he said. Does chopped meat cost a lot? Asked Marisol. It costs plenty, said Grandfather. Maybe we should get him some dry dog food, said Marisol. I certainly cannot afford to feed him chopped meat, said Grandfather. When they returned from the colmado later that evening, Grandfather carried the groceries. Marisol carried a bag of dog food. But Pancho was not there. He was not there when Marisol woke up the next morning, nor the morning after that. Don't worry, said Grandfather. If anything happened to Pancho, Nando or Doña Elvira would tell us. Marisol ran to talk to Nando before he went fishing. Nando, have you seen Pancho? Asked Marisol. He hasn't been home for 2 nights and 2 days. Said Nando. He has probably found a female dog that he likes. You mean Pancho has a girlfriend? Asked Marisol. Why not? He is a healthy young dog. Come fishing with me, Mary. The snappers are biting real good. It will take your mind off the dog. No thanks, Nando, said Marisol. I want to speak to Doña Elvira. Inside the colmado, it was cool and dark. Doña Elvira, have you seen my dog? Asked Marisol. He disappeared 2 days ago. No, said Doña Elvira. I have not seen him, and I always notice Pancho. Pancho may have a female friend, said Doña Elvira. That's what Nando thinks, said Marisol. Doña Elvira gave Marisol a lemon drop and a lollipop. Take these, she said, and don't worry about Pancho. Marisol woke up in the middle of the night. She felt her way to the door and called Pancho's name. Pancho was not in the yard. As she walked back to her room, she bumped into Grandfather. Marisol, what are you doing up in the middle of the night? I was looking for Pancho. What were you doing? Asked Marisol. I was looking for him too. Grandfather led her back to bed and tucked her in. I don't know why I love such a foolish little girl, he said. Marisol looked at him shyly. I don't know why I love such a foolish old grandpa. Pancho saves the day. Wake up, Marisol, he's back. Pancho is back, said Grandfather. Marisol jumped out of bed and ran outdoors. Pancho, she cried. She hugged him again and again. Grandfather brought out a big bowl of dog food. Doña Elvira came running. Lo vi, she shouted. I saw him. I saw Pancho. Just then, Nando came up the hill with 2 red snappers. Pancho is home, Marisol called out. Where have you been, Pancho? Nando asked. He knelt down and put his ear up to the dog's nose. Nando nodded to the dog and then stood up. It is just as I thought, he said. Pancho has a girlfriend. What did I tell you, said Doña Elvira. Look at him, skinny, chewed up, and worn out. Marisol kneeled down and put her ear near the dog's nose, the way Nando had. Are you sure he said that, Nando? I can't hear anything. Nobody can except Nando, said Grandfather. That's true, said Doña Elvira. Nando is the only one on the hill who understands dog talk. That evening, when Marisol and Grandfather sat down to dinner, they heard Pancho barking. Grandfather got up to see what was the matter. There was a pot of rice burning on the stove. Pancho was barking because of the smoke. "Thanks, Pancho," Grandfather said, and turned off the stove. "What happened?" asked Marisol. "Why did you say, 'Thanks, Pancho'?" "Because," said Grandfather, "he smelled something burning and warned us." "Oh, Grandpa," said Marisol, "aren't we lucky to have Pancho? What if he had not been here? We could have had a fire," said Grandfather. At bedtime, Marisol was quiet. "¿Qué pasa?" asked Grandfather. "What's the matter?" "Nothing. I just wondered if Pancho really is our dog." "Marisol," said Grandfather, "I told you from the start that once you feed a dog, he thinks you own him." "Do we own him?" asked Marisol. Grandfather chuckled. "I don't know," he said, "but he sure owns us." "Does that mean we will always feed him?" "I guess so," said Grandfather. "He is a good watchdog." Marisol hugged Grandfather. "I love you, Abuelito," said Marisol. "I love you too, Mary. But remember, Pancho is an outside dog, and he will always be an outside dog." "Of course," said Marisol. "I have always wanted an outside dog." The end.